All-Pro cornerback Jaylen Ramsey's time in Miami might be coming to an end. This are big news from yesterday. And the Dolphins GM Chris Grier addressed the situation with Ramsey yesterday, providing a lot of clarity on just exactly what's going on here with the relationship between him and the team.
I will say these decisions aren't done quickly, and they're not taken lightly because we spent a lot of time this offseason working through this, talking through things. At the end of the day, Jalen did not ask for a trade. So we went through the process and just felt that after numerous conversations and then talking last week with Jalen and his agent, that it was best to move forward, and it was best interest of the Miami Dolphins and for Jaylen Ramsey.
You know, Louis, I can't help but think back to some of our meetings even that we had with Jaylen Ramsey when doing Monday Night Football games. This whole thing is a bit surprising to me in a lot of ways. But what is the next step for Miami and Ramsey?
Yeah, I couldn't hear what Chris said there at the end, but you're right. Going back to the times that we talked with Jalen, look, Jalen's one of those guys who really is no nonsense when it comes to wanting to feel as though everything is kind of all geared towards winning in all three phases of the game. Not just his phase, not just what he's doing, but he sees the big picture. And he's a guy who seems like he doesn't have a whole lot of tolerance for when he doesn't feel like things are really going that way. And it just seems like, he would be a guy who maybe would be, really rejuvenated and kind of would maybe welcome a fresh start, although he didn't, as Chris said, he did not request a trade. But you can think of some places where he would really fit. I sit there and I think the Atlanta Falcons, to go back down there with Raheem Morris and really move permanently to the star position and play the nickel and play like a hybrid safety, I think it'd be perfect for him. Absolutely perfect. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where ultimately what happens with him. But that's a place I would keep an eye on if they do move him.
Lou, I love that. And, we in draft time and everybody wants to get young, but Jaylen Ramsey, I truly feel still can be a championship piece, surrounded by a team and just plugging them in and playing. And one of the places that we just talked about, Baltimore, they're a team that has always welcomed veterans that have played at a high level in the secondary and the wide receiver spot, but they need help at that position. Jalen would absolutely be phenomenal across from Marlon Humphrey. They would be able to do multiple things with him and Kyle Hamilton with their size and ability to get the football. I'll be interested to see if they would even be in the talks, because Baltimore obviously has a lot of things going right. But this feels like one of those Baltimore-type players that will help you on your quest to win a championship, as they've been so close for so long.
Yeah, I like it, especially considering it seems like, and it makes sense, that Ramsey wants to go to a contender. DJ, looking at the draft, should Miami be looking to replace Ramsey in round one?
Well, I think that's definitely on the table, but I wouldn't, just rule that's going to be the selection. They're going to focus on that position. There's more picks later on. To me, the offensive line's where you at least got to start and have the conversation. I know they've said Patrick Paul, last year's second-round pick, is going to plug right in and be that left tackle. How confident are they that he's going to be able to take over from Terron Armstead? Because this draft has options for you where they're picking at 13. Armand Membu, you look at Banks from Texas, these guys who could kick inside if you needed him to, and maybe Paul works out. If Paul doesn't work out, you've got options there. But they're going to win games based on how many times they can run Tua Tagovailoa out there each and every Sunday. And to me, it starts with making sure he's protected.
Yeah, I completely would agree with DJ as far as protecting Tua Tagovailoa. If you're going to move Jaylen Ramsey, though, to the guy's credit, I think you want to give him a contender, somebody where he can go in and he can be motivated to show up to work every day. You mentioned Atlanta. I'll give you a couple more. Minnesota, Green Bay. What about Tampa? Ty Bowles, he wants to blitz a lot. You can put Jaylen Ramsey in a lot of that man-to-man situation. Plus, Florida is a no-tax state. So there are several situations where a corner of his caliber, somebody who's got the pellets on the wall, the Jaylen Ramsey, who can play inside and outside, who has scheme versatility. There are several spots in this league where he can play. It's all about, if Miami and Jalen have come to the conclusion that Miami is no longer the place for him, then it's about finding where he wants to go. And to me, there's a plethora of places, Swagoo.
Yeah, I think specifically, Boog, you mentioned a lot of teams. Obviously, a contender would be in Jalen's sights. And remember, he's a Super Bowl champion already. I think a lot of times when players get to this point, when they play such good football, they want to go somewhere where the team around them, to your point, Boog, is going to reinvigorate them. And be in a position each and every Sunday to not only win games, but to make plays. And I can't think of a better place than Baltimore. I still come back to that. Now, this is obviously wishful thinking we hear in April. The amount of points that Lamar Jackson and this offense can put up and his opportunity to get the ball and take the ball away and make plays because the pass game has to happen, it just gets me excited about him being in Baltimore across from Marlon Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton.
I love it. Boog, you live in Florida. That's why, you know a thing or two about tax breaks.
Yes, I live in Florida. Sunshine and no state taxes. You can play golf all the time, Laura.
Okay, thanks for that. Still to come on NFL Live, DJ number 3. They're taking a deep look at multiple quarterbacks this week in private workouts. Here's GM Joe Shane earlier today.
With the signing of those two players, I think we put ourselves in a position where, I don't think that's mandatory or something that we're, our feet to the fire and we have to do. They've got a lot of skins on the wall, and I do think we've upgraded that room, compared to where it was a year ago. I like the two guys that we have, and we'll be open to all options. I mean, those type of strategy sessions have been ongoing and, talking through different scenarios. So, yeah, we're always going to be open to, either or of those scenarios. We've received some calls. Yeah, we've received some calls.
Interesting if they would trade. I doubt it. But again, a reminder that they're working out this week. Tyler Shook, Jalen Milroe, and of course, Shedeur Sanders. But Swagger, with all the signs of indecision in New York, what do you think they should do at pick number 3?
Yeah, go with the best player. If you're not sold on these quarterbacks, and that's, Travis Hunter would be wonderful there, but Abdul Carter would be wonderful as well across from Brian Burns. This is simple to me for the New York Giants. If you don't like a quarterback, take one of those two players. If you don't want one of those two players, trade out of the position and get more picks so you can build more of this team. But to me, it would be a no-brainer. Whichever is left out of Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, you enhance the pass rush, or you get who I think is a generational player in Travis Hunter that can help you on both sides of the ball, even though I don't think it would be for the full game. I know Travis Hunter has made a lot of noise about going both ways. I think you can manage that with him with the talent that he has. This dude is a top 5 overall talent at wide receiver and defensive back in any draft. So I think a team has a lot to think about if they take him. But Abdul Carter bolstering that pass rush, especially with what's happening in the NFC East with those quarterbacks, that may be the route to go.
Yes, Mike, I think it will be one of those two players, depending upon who falls to them at 3, depending upon obviously what Cleveland does at 2. And I think the other thing that they're trying to do right now is they're just trying to get this quarterback stacking right. They want to make sure that they're prepared for all scenarios and really have a game plan depending upon how the draft really shakes out. Later on throughout the top 10 picks, namely what does New Orleans do at 9, what does Pittsburgh do at 21, and then what do they need to do in order to get in position to get one of the guys that they liked, depending upon who was left at that point. After 9 goes off the board, and then see what Pittsburgh does, because then I think at that point the Giants are going to have to assess everything as far as the quarterback position is concerned. Is Jackson Dart still available? Is Shedeur still available? Is Tyler Shook still available? Is Jalen Milroe still available? They need to get a comfort level with with these guys, stack them properly, and then make their move in the bottom half of that first round if that's in fact what they're going to do.
Yeah, and Lewis, I think some people hear about these workouts late in the process and think this is something that they just decided last minute, we got to cram for the test. This stuff's been on the books, and talking to the guys in the Giants personnel department, they've planned this out. It's been on the calendar. It's not a surprise pop-up workout here. But Lewis, you talked about what do you do if you take a player there at number 3. To me, I think Abdul Carter will be the pick. I think Travis Hunter goes 2. Abdul Carter goes to the Giants. And then Pittsburgh is that target, knowing at 21 that could be a quarterback spot. So what does it cost the Giants to get to 20? It's really not that bad when you look at the chart. You're looking at pick 34 in the second round, pick 65 in the third round. They also have an extra third round pick they'd hold on to, and then a 5th round pick. So they can have their cake and eat it too. You can get the premier player and come back up for the quarterback. And to me, Jackson Dart is one that makes sense in that environment, in that division, in that weather. I just think he's a little more rugged, a little more arm strength, a little more physical. To me, that's a match there with the Giants.
DJ, that makes me wonder, though, do you think that the Saints at 9 are a spot that you have to get to? That they seem like a team, certainly, that could be in the mix for a quarterback as well.
Well, they've done their homework. They've done their homework on all these quarterbacks, but just, in talking to people around the league, that doesn't seem to be a spot right now